Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Upkeep Pledge Pros podcast, a podcast dedicated to unmatched value and unwavering support for our customers and the community. Today, we have my longtime friend, Jim Vantyghem, who is the Asset Health Manager for Associated Materials. Jim, welcome.
Thanks, Brian. Glad to be here.
So awesome to have you. For everybody listening, Jim and I met, probably 5 years ago now.
Absolutely.
Uh, I was living in New Orleans, and Rob Calvarosi asked me to be on his podcast with Jim, and we talked about the human side of maintenance and all of that wildness, which is still relevant today. As we've been talking, Jim and I have actually been talking for like the last half hour before we started recording. So what I wanted to continue the conversation that we've been having, Jim, and I want to start with technicians, maintenance people. And we have been seeing where the skills that are required and the skills that we have are not always in alignment. And when you and I were talking before this, we were talking about standardized testing, aptitude testing across, I've done it in the past. I know you've done it in the past. And you really start to see some of these things transpire. But like you were saying, it's not necessarily that they don't know. Maybe they're not good at test taking. Maybe they're nervous. Maybe the wording is different than how they see it. Maybe there's a lot of different things that can be there. But at the end of the day, the skills need to be transferable. The skills need to be applied, right?
Exactly.
So I want to kind of touch on that for a second. I know for me, I've been a mechanic the majority of my life. I've worked with tons of mechanics, really, really, really good ones and really, really, really bad ones. And I'm sure you have too. But to me, when I look at skills from a maintenance technician, mechanic standpoint, I think the first thing is it's a choice. You have to have you have to make the choice that you want to do these things. You want to do them right. You want to seek knowledge. You want to shadow. You want to ask the right questions, turn the wrenches, do the work. So I think a choice is first. What are your thoughts?
I think it carries on to the conversation we had about why does a maintenance person want to be a maintenance person? And and these are kind of the questions we neglect to ask as leaders in maintenance or maybe haven't thought of. So why does your maintenance person want to be working for you? What inspired them to be a maintenance person in the first place? And we talked about in mindset. When you look at mindset, you have inspiration versus motivation. We talk a lot about, I want to motivate my people to do whatever they need to do or whatever the company wants them to do, per se. But that doesn't necessarily get us down the road or down the path we want to get down if we don't know what inspires them in the first place. When you and I were having this conversation, we were talking about, the basics of maintenance, getting good at planning and scheduling, getting good at PM optimization, and getting good at defect elimination. But if we want to do that, we still have to look at the other side of the coin, being our team. How is our team, or how is the makeup of our team going to achieve those outcomes? And it starts with, why are they in maintenance in the first place? What inspires them? And we talked about this in the fact of, if you have somebody that's great at welding and they want to get into maintenance because they want to be a fabricator, but they've got into the industrial mechanical field, there's a lot of things missing if all you want to do is be a fabricator or a welder, or you're really good at troubleshooting electronics, but you're not good at hydraulics and pneumatics. That's important information as leaders, for us as maintenance leaders.
Sure.
We need to understand, for me, we need to understand what drives them. If I'm planning and scheduling work and I've got somebody who's really good at hydraulic work, but I'm handing a lot of electrical work off to them, they're probably not going to be motivated to want to do that work, or they're going to be very nervous. And it's going to be up to me to determine and identify that issue. So again, going back as leaders, when we look at our people, if we have some people that are really good at electrical, really good at pneumatics, hydraulics, really good at troubleshooting, so on and so forth, it's up to us to start to look at our people as individuals, find their strengths, and when we're cross-training and handing off and planning and scheduling the work, we want the planner to be well aware that, hey, Jim is good at mechanical. We're going to hand a lot of mechanical work off to him right now, but we need to bring his skill sets up on controls. So we're going to partner Jim up with our controls specialist in our department and maybe give him 4, 5, or 6% of his work dedicated to understanding controls. That will help to build the confidence of our team and help to build the skills that we're looking for. But if we don't do that, we're missing the boat. And you and I talked about that. We're kind of our own worst enemy in the long run.
Yeah, we always are in all things outside of maintenance as well. But with this, holistically, what this is, and this is something that I've really honed in on in my leadership time, is know who your people are, right? Know who they
Mm.
are. Know about them, meet with them regularly, one-on-one and as a group. I used to meet with technicians and supervisors and managers one-on-one all the time, just to shoot the shit, right? Chop it up, learn about the things that they love, the things that they hate, the just everything, right? And it starts to paint a picture of how you can better lead that person. And you notice I don't say manage, I say lead. You want to lead these people. You're not managing people, right? You manage resources. And yet you could say humans are a resource, but that's just, to me, that's a non-human way to say it. But yeah, I mean, you just got to know who they are. You have to know what makes them tick, as I like to say. And I never had leaders like that. I would always be the guy. I was always good at electrical with heavy machinery. So it's like I got all the electrical stuff. I did everything, but I got a lot of electrical. But no one took the time to say, "Hey, Bryan, what do you like? What interests you?" It was more about you're good at this, so this is what you get. Fortunately, I was able to be like, "Hey, I also know how to do this and this and this too. I'd like some of that stuff as well." Uh,
Exactly.
so it ended up working out in a sense, but kind of thinking about this, like these things apply across the board in our world of maintenance, reliability, CMMS, all that stuff, and kicking it to the CMMS side of it, you know, the same principle applies. But now you're going with how can I take what I know about people and how can I inspire them to utilize a system that is ultimately going to benefit them and the business in the long run to achieve all of our goals, whether it's more manpower, better pay, more resources, better tooling, more structure, right? Less downtime, less overtime, less unplanned work that all benefits the technician. So what do you, I know you know this stuff. Like, what do you think about that?
Well, one thing is for certain. We don't like change, but we all want change. We don't like what we're doing. We don't like the situations we're in, but that's all we do is talk about it. We have a lot of proof and evidence available of why things aren't working for us, especially in the maintenance world. Why don't I get the time to fix equipment? Why don't I get overtime because I have to get this, I want to get this problem solved, so on and so forth. Why don't I have the inventory in stock? Why are the PMs never changed? We have all the proof and evidence to support it. And we sit here complaining that nothing changes, but yet we always hear we don't like change. So we have a lot of proof and evidence, and that's part of what we need to do with mindset of our people is understand and be able to relate an unknown to a known. That's one thing you have to remember, Bryan. The key to communication is linking an unknown to a known. So when you're dealing with maintenance people, you have to, it starts by identifying their issues, identifying what's happening. Actually, I just did this a couple of days ago. I was checking in on a bunch of maintenance techs, and my God, I was just hearing the chirp, 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 chirp. But I listened intently to what was happening. Again, checked out. What are they inspired to as probably the number one issue? Not being heard, not being, or excuse me, not feeling like a part of something, not having a say in what's going on. And you will see that common thread throughout any organization. I don't feel heard. I don't feel like you care. And when we don't care, then when we try to, as leaders, try to impress of things that need to get done, if we don't care, our words go through one ear and out the other. So when you understand that principle, and then in lighting on why people don't do what they should do as well is there's a principle that we talked about. People need to earn their right to fix equipment in our business. And sometimes what it is we have to bring somebody's thinking at a higher level than what was used to create the problem in the first place. And that is a hard thing to do. So when you're dealing with maintenance people, is you have to start at ground level and be in their shoes. You were a maintenance tech, you were a maintenance professional, I was a maintenance professional. I complained just as much as they did. And but complaining doesn't give you resolve. Go home and complain. Go home and tell your wife you're not going to fix the door handle that's broken on the bathroom door. Go tell her you're not going to fix the leaky toilet that's been discoloring the floor for 5 months. See what happens. You don't get away with it very long. Same thing happens when you go to work. You've got to take care of your assets. If people don't want to work so hard as they are in reactive maintenance, do something about it. The reason they're doing that is because they're not engaged to try and change it.
That's right.
And right? And
That's
we
right.
have to be engaged to change.
Yeah. I mean that's why it's so important to incorporate your team at all levels of the business into some of the decision making, whether it's a selection of a CMMS, the implementation of a CMMS, it's what tools you can't armchair quarterback the tools you need in your office, right? For your team. Maybe you have new equipment. Maybe the guys are saying, hey, these things have changed. There's new stuff on the line. We don't have this thing. We need ball Allens instead of regular Allens. We need, flex head ratchets to get in these certain spots. We should think about getting some 3H drive impacts so that we can speed up the time it takes to take on and off non-critical things, right? All that has to be done through a mutual communication and understanding with your team. And a lot of things, I forget who said it, but someone said in maintenance that all of the problems that you have and all the answers to those problems are out on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to be a conduit to understand them and then communicate them in an effective way to whoever needs to know them and leverage them and influence them to achieve those goals. But it's out there. And if you're a maintenance, I've said this before, if you're a maintenance leader and you work in your office all day long, do not complain about the results that you get out on that shop floor.
100% agree. Yep. Everything we do is in alignment with what we're producing or what our actions are entailing. If we're not getting what we want, we have to start looking in the mirror. And they can't use confirmation bias because it's always that truth that doesn't support us that's going to bite us in the ass each and every time. I get
Yes.
a couple examples of things I had done in the past. Anyone knows me knows I'm a whiteboard guy. If you walked in my office, all walls are whiteboards. It's like a
I like
war room.
whiteboards too.
And what I used to do is I'd take them on the floor, rolling whiteboards. And what we would do, there was a series called House. And and if you ever watch the series, they would write all the problems on the board and then they would start to cross them out because it's that the pollination of thinking, right? Let's see, does this make sense to that? So on and so forth. And at one time, I worked for a company that I was the first employee hired, and we created floor joists. So in the process of floor joists, you're allowed so much of deflection per foot for the beam to have a bow in it. Well, the deflection was like 3.5 inches. It was crazy. And everybody's complaining to each other and going on, carrying on. So what I did was I brought the maintenance guys, the quality manager, production supervisor, and the operator of the machine into a room. And we had a long discussion. And the discussion led to 3 or 4 items that they were going to go check, that they agreed on to check and to verify and make adjustments. Bryan, no word of a lie, they left the room. 15 minutes later, the deflection on the beam over 64 feet was, I think it was a quarter inch. Quarter inch. It was just a simple communicational tool of getting them in, getting to think through the problem. And I had another pair of mechanics that were just pulling their hair out. And if you understand something about human nature and a little bit of neuroscience, do you ever have a problem that you couldn't solve, but when you go to sleep at night, you wake up in the middle of the night or in the morning, and go, oh, I forgot to try this or that, and you go try it and it works.
Don't get me started, Jim.
Do you know how the neuroscience of that works?
Uh,
Your thinking goes to a limbic system. It goes to the emotional side first. Everything we do goes from that's why people get all up in emotional and they take it and they're either down or they're depressed or so on and so forth. If they allow their limbic system to calm, everything goes to the front cortex. And that's where the logical rationalism of how we problem solve works. So because I'm a student of this, what I used to do with the maintenance guys, they'd have this massive issue that they're having. They run out of ideas. You know what you do? Send them for a break. Sounds crazy. I'd send them for breaks. You're smokers, go have a smoke. I want you to take a break. I want you to settle yourself down because right now it's like never respond in anger because anger just gets words flying out that you can't take back. Same thing when we're doing problem solving. If we're in anger or we're upset or our emotions are getting the best of us, we're not thinking with clarity. So I would send them off and then, maybe 10, 15 minutes later, I bring them in the office and we just sit down, calm down. And then we start talking about the problem. Same thing on the board. Did you guys try this? What do you think? What do you think? And next thing you know, these guys went out and solved the problem. Again, it's not to be modest, but 10, 15 minutes later, they're coming back. They got the problem solved. It's just simple skill sets that we need to incorporate so that we can do a better job. And it all stems for me, because I'm a student of this, it's improved my ability to get my teams to do more in a shorter period of time with more accuracy, is applying those principles of how we really think things through.
right. I mean, you're creating that avenue for ideas to flow, right? And making it communal. And that, I've been in situations where I'm just speaking out loud about something and someone else hears it and goes, hmm, did you think about this?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why the time end saying is two heads are better than one, four heads are better than two, six heads are better than four, right? So it's like you could be thinking about it in such a way or having what do they call it? Cognitive dissonance, or having some sort of bias, or maybe your understanding of the system is less though than some. And just by speaking out loud and flowing through the ideas that you have and others, these things start to come together.
Mm-hmm.
And I love whiteboards too. I draw all over whiteboards.
Absolutely.
The only thing I don't do with the whiteboard is plan and schedule. Everything else can go on a whiteboard.
Absolutely. I 100% hear you. You were talking about skill set before, and we were talking about George Williams, Reliability X, and I had a great conversation with George a few months back. And George put me on to scientific management techniques with Stephen Barry. And what the company does, it does skills assessment, because as we talked about, I had looked at the Ramsey skill set, and it was a director who wanted to have a skills assessment done throughout the corporation. So they were talking about these tests, and I said, well, and I had gotten or I had received a demo test, and I looked at it, not bad on it, but then I looked at some of these questions that they're not relevant to what we're doing. They're not relevant to the industrial world. We're relevant to some of these are relevant to utilities work in a city, so on. And so we managed to start a couple plants. We have one that already did the skills assessment, and the other is due next week. The cool thing about the skills assessment, it's hands-on, practical. You got to do a see, hear, touch. If you want people to learn, they have to do a see, hear, touch, because some people are very visual, some are auditorial, some are kinesthetic primaries, and you got to touch on all. So the machines themselves, there's a timing machine for mechanical that takes an item and puts it through a series of rotations, so on and so forth. And then there's electrical test where they've got relays and components and so on and so forth to do the testing. And the point I guess I'm trying to get with this a couple is that when you get people and they give you a resume and they've done this and this and this, and they tell you a big story, it's like we talked about before. It's like Bob Latino would say, work imagined versus work done. It's like I changed a few, so now I'm a control specialist. And sometimes, you get some of these guys that do walk the talk with the resume, but a lot of them don't. And so the idea is, do they know how to do critical thinking? Do they really know how to use their hands? So what's interesting as a test result, as we had spoken about, we used a Pareto analysis 80-20 rule. 20% of the guys out of 11 people had the skill sets to actually go out and do what I would say proper critical thinking assessment. The others, not so good. And it doesn't mean that that's bad. What that means is it has an opportunity for us as leaders to put um, effort back into them. What are they missing? What can we give them as far as tools are concerned? But I guess the hence for what I'm trying to say is sometimes it's really good if you get a resume to put somebody through that practical test first. That see here, just see where they are. You know, it doesn't mean you wouldn't hire them. It just means, hey, where are you? What are you doing for us? What can you do for us? And are you trainable, teachable? Same could be for operators. If you don't have if you have an operator that's not mechanically inclined, how does that affect you, Brian? Seriously, how does that affect you when you have an operator that really doesn't have the mechanical capability or aptitude to be able to really understand how a machine works?
What that does to me, well, I guess it would depend on the machine, one. Two, what it does, it says to me is that when that machine starts to experience some form of anomaly, the communication of that anomaly will be construed. And it
Yeah,
will be harder for us as the maintenance team to decipher what that anomaly may be.
100%. That is touching it. That is nailing the, nailing the hammer on the head of the nail perfectly. You hit it. If they don't have that ability to, first of all, too, if they don't have the ability to understand how the machine works, you really want that operator to be kind of like be a junior mechanic.
Sure.
Imagine I'm sending two guys. I'm paying two guys $40 an hour, my maintenance people $40 an hour, and I'm paying an operator $25 an hour. And I've got a job that requires one person, but they need an assistant. I don't want to send two maintenance guys. I want the operator to be there as well. Help. If you teach them how to, where the zerks are and tell them one pump each and so on, they can do that job. Or if you need a hand lifting a gearbox or aligning a coupler, hey, they're there as well. Educate them, bring them up to speed, because if you have somebody who's very astute and mechanically minded, it'll make a world of difference for the maintenance and for production throughput, period. Because a lot of these small little bullshit problems we have start to go away. And then we can focus on the bigger things.
Right. They are already there. They're already at the machine. They are there all day long with that machine. It is worth its weight in gold to ensure the operator understands the basics of that machine's operation. And I don't mean crank out 100 widgets. That's what I don't mean by that. I don't mean capacity. I mean understanding that this arm moves in this way. These sounds are normal. This looks right, right? And it comes back to one of the things that I do and when I used to write PMs and services for all kinds of machines, where there was an operator involved, the the very first task item on the PM is go talk to the operator and ask them if the machine has been performing its function. Have any anomalies been viewed or seen? So you're
Absolutely.
doing two things here. You're asking a technician to build a relationship with an operator. Huge, huge benefit there. The second thing is the operator now knows that they will be asked at some point if there's anything going wrong with their machine. So it can cues them up to pay attention to the machine a little better because at the end of the day, they're responsible for the output of that machine. So then the third thing, I know I said two, but there is a third thing. The third thing is now that this relationship is forming, work is being communicated, you're generating more corrective work. When that corrective work is actually followed up on and completed, now you've built trust
There you go.
amongst your people. Now the operator knows if I say something, something might happen.
100% agree with you. And also to add to that on the other side, this is the kind of thing we need to teach our maintenance staff how to communicate to an operator, how to communicate to people. When I started in the industry, what I learned quickly is that people like to talk about themselves.
Of course.
When they're sitting there working on their board today, you got to go ask them questions about them. Get that, establish that rapport. Do you really care about their family? Ask them about their family. But where I'm really going with that is Learn how to first bring the emotion down to the person if something isn't working. Listen. How do you listen to them? Ask them questions. If I'm a maintenance tech, we should be teaching our maintenance techs to go say, oh, you work on this all day long. What do you think the problem is? What do you experience? Have you seen somebody do something before to correct this problem? My God, those little secrets, we call them secrets because apparently we don't use them well enough in our industry. Those things make a world of difference in the way we get our responses back and how quickly we can resolve our problems.
Yeah,
And it's one of those things I think that it's a road we don't go down enough on. So that's why you hear me harp a lot on the human side of it.
sure.
It's something we're not spending enough time to condition our people mentally so that when they come to work, they're happy and they're fulfilled and they go home and they take the same thing home. Because if somebody says, don't bring your personal life into your work life and your work life into your personal life, I'm going to call the bullshit card in that. That ain't happening.
It's impossible.
And so, we're saying the same things. We're just getting to the point of how do you condition as a leader, your maintenance team to perform much better at a higher level.
Yeah. I mean,
Nothing with fringes or so.
right. And, talking about one last thing about the operators is I've not, I've taken operators from operations and made them apprentice junior mechanics.
Sure,
And
absolutely.
they stay in the maintenance department and they grow. And it has been massively successful with a lot of them because they're already they know the operating context of the machine. They know what it should be doing and how it should be functioning. Now you just have to teach them all the intricate little parts that make up how that thing works, right?
Hmm.
And I've been a mechanic for machines that I don't fully understand how the whole thing should be working, but I can troubleshoot and deduce what the problem is. But it would have been a lot easier for me if I did know how the whole thing worked, right?
Hmm.
And operators kind of bridge that gap in a sense. If you have good operator, I'm not saying every operator, but if you have a good operator who's really paying attention to their machine and its context, they stand a decent chance of being a mechanic at some point, right? It does take a lot on our behalf as
Yeah.
leaders to ensure that they have the necessary steps and resources to be successful. Um, and same thing goes with CMMS. We talked about it earlier. Like people are like, oh, I get a CMMS, all my downtime's going away. And here's the crazy thing. Some CMMS providers say that. They say that through using their platform, you can reduce downtime, you can eliminate costs, and while that is true, the sheer fact of just having a CMMS will not accomplish any of that. It takes people and people and the culture that people work within is the hardest thing to get in alignment with that system, no matter what system it is.
Totally agree. And one thing about CMMS systems, because I've helped to design a couple and I've implemented quite a few, we also have to understand in our industry that when we present a software and we present the solutions to that, what that software can produce for us, most of the time you're robbing Peter to pay Paul when it comes to your maintenance people that have a stack of work already this high and they're saying now you have to put all this data in AMMS or you got to put in any CMMS or upkeep or whatever. Sometimes they're looking for a solution that you can provide them that can be implemented so quickly. For instance, if you look at it, CMMS systems, it takes a while to put material management in place. We know that. It takes a while to put preventive maintenance in place. But you can create an asset within a few minutes and you can create a work order against that asset and put time against it pretty fast.
Oh yeah.
So what if you expedited that and said, here's a set of codes. If you do this, this is the end result. You may be able to save some time for that maintenance manager and relieve the pressure they have on them or whomever the project manager is. I think there's some things we can learn and do as far as professionals in how we implement or provide service as a CMMS provider. The other thing that we can do as well, I'll tell you a little story of something we did just recently as a pilot. Historically, there's always a problem that I've experienced between downtime accuracy between what production tells you and what maintenance tells you. There's always this difference. So with a group of guys, not very many, a couple, two or three. We're looking at a process line going, how can we get accuracy using our CMMS system to get a more accurate downtime and response time of the mechanic to the line? So what we had done, we took our CMMS system, we create security groups for all the process lines. So now you have a barcode on a kiosk for this process line. You want to log into your CMMS system. You get to the login page, you scan the barcode, instantly opens up the software to a very limited, no more, no less data input screen of work order. In the work order, you have 4 fields of information that a production supervisor or lead would populate. Work type, we have equipment list, and the equipment list is filtered to only look at the active equipment for that line. You'll love this one. When we get to remarks, we know that there's a problem with communication. A lot of Spanish people in the workforce in the US and Canada. So we created these placards, or this card system, and what it did was most of them have 9 or 10 problems that would be common for that process line or combined process lines. So we coded it so that you would have the process line as a prefix with some type of little acronym to represent that, dash P1 for the first problem, dash whatever the problem is. It could be, in our case, it could be a fault error on a computer. It could be because we're in a window business, it could be a heating element that's gone. It could be a host of things. So we have this on a card that's laminated, sits right on the kiosk. And on the kiosk, and what it does is it gives you the English version, then it gives you the Spanish translation, then you have a barcode. And so instead of getting people to write a story, now we have a Spanish-speaking person comes up and they look at it because English isn't so good for them. They find the Spanish translation, they scan the barcode, and it populates the field in English. Now we use this information to look at what are the different problems we have. The top 3 offenders are the common problems on the line. But also, Brian, it takes 25 seconds to put the work order type, pick the equipment, put the remark in, and the shift that they were on. Because I keep telling people, what shift is it? Could be a shift of brand new people. It could be a shift of veterans. It could be a shift where we're always having a different temperature change. We don't know. 4 fields in 25 seconds max.
That's just like our request function. That's how you would track, right? So it's literally 4 fields, same exact fields.
It's same thing, and it's done. But think about it.
Yeah.
Now I've communicated. Now the maintenance guy comes out, and we created this system so that we could get this communication going and get more accurate downtime and response time. So now we have that work order put in. And by the way, we got a rule now: no work order, no fix. We got to start to force the hand somewhere. We got to build the system. We have to build it.
I've had that for years, Jim.
Yep. Me too.
I speak in work orders. You want something done, speak in my language.
Exactly. No work order, no fix. So it takes a while to get them into it. But here's the key. As soon as a maintenance guy arrives, he can put in the start, and he can put in the start date and start time. Takes him 5 seconds. Goes and fixes the problem, puts the date completed and time. Now I've got the response time, I've got a more accurate downtime, and now we can analyze the data and with more efficaciousness and congruency. And also, we're now blending 2 departments to talk to each other.
Sure.
You're responsible to create the work order. We're responsible to finish it. And when we go in the meeting, there isn't going to be, well, it was down for 4 hours. You said it was down for 3 hours. No, that goes away. Now people are held accountable because we have to look at equipment effectiveness in the long run. That's what we have to get to.
Sure.
So those tools alone help to get and drive that mindset, and that system helps to drive a culture that we care and we're going to change the way we do things. And it's not like we have a choice that we can do it or not. We will do it, but we're going to help you and we're going to cushion the comfort of this to get you to that level.
Right.
So pretty cool system, implementing it now with 2 other plants. So 2 plants this week. and then move it on through all 11 plants. So kind of
Nice.
exciting stuff.
It is good stuff. It's just that's the same thing that we would do. I've done in the past. You have your request function. The request function is time stamped. Once
Hmm.
it's that's the true start of downtime, right?
Hmm.
Now, the caveat there is a lot of times you'll have operators who will reset, try to, kind of cobble their way through, and then when that doesn't work, then they submit, right? So you still have some production interruption, like a 10% variance or whatever, but when that request is sent, that's the initial downtime start, right? When the
Hmm.
technician arrives, they open their work order and their timer starts automatically. Response time. Now they've worked. Now you have their MTTR. When the work order is closed, now from the start of the request, from the work order closed, the machine's in function, there's your downtime stamp from a
Exactly.
time standpoint. But you can also, in upkeep, you can actually mark the machine non-operational, and
Hmm.
that will start the timer.
Yep.
You can do it two ways. But either way you do it, you're still understanding those three important things. When did it stop? How long did it take to fix? And what was the overall downtime?
When did you release it back to production to start? And
Right.
as time goes on, you look at response time, you look at diagnostic time, you look at actual wrench time, because now it allows you, for anyone who's dealing with maintenance, when you listen to this conversation, you're going to realize that you're now starting to fine tune your system. You want to increase your wrench time, so you want to put point of use tools and common parts, repair parts at your station close by. So there is no seeking and hunting for this. You want your documents tied to your tablet so that you don't have to run back and go through 2 hours worth of manuals to find where this issue is, or a documentation of how to set up a piece of equipment or look at an electrical or mechanical drawing and so on. It's right there at your fingertips.
Yep.
You need help from outside. Take your video on your tablet, turn it around, show the tech that you've called from your OEM and say, "What do you think the problem is?" Now we're starting to really hone in the system to be more accurate, and to me, that inspires our people or motivates our people to want to do better.
Right.
They see these tools in action.
So we had very similar to that. We had operational spares, which were routine parts
Hmm.
we all knew needed to be changed, were high utilization parts out on the floor, right by the machines. And of course, we had the storeroom, which was all the other stuff, right?
Exactly.
Lubricants also. We had lubricant stations, specific types of lubricants for specific machines stored appropriately at their destination where they should be. So a technician doesn't have to leave the plant floor, go find whatever and come back, right? So if they needed it, and I'm talking from a corrective sense, not a preventive sense. A corrective sense, a machine breaks down, they just fix it. Oh, they installed a new bearing, they're going to grease the bearing. They shouldn't be running all over the place, right? They should respond, have the things that are necessary for them to do the job. And like you said, by analyzing that timestamp and the notes and talking to the technician, you're going to uncover a lot of things that can help optimize that process from a preventive or a corrective standpoint or a reactive standpoint. But the key is you got to be there. You have to interact and you have to go out sometimes and do the work with your team. And if you can't, well, then you better stand there asking all the questions, showing humility to your team. And trust me, they will appreciate that. It's much better than sitting in your office and saying, "Why is it broke? You guys didn't get that thing fixed yet? What's going on?" Now you've lost respect. Because if it were me, and I've had leaders like that, first thing in my mind is, you don't know what you're talking about. You have not stood in my shoes. You've
Hmm.
never held a wrench to that machine like I have. Don't get on me about what it takes until you come do it with me. If you can't do it with me, at least take my input when I provide it.
100% agree. And that's why you'll be able to sell upkeep software much better than a lot of others who have never been in the trenches to work and then say, "This is how it can help you." These are the things you build rapport with. You
Good.
identify with your audience, and then once you have identified your audience and you build that 90 seconds to build that limbic synchrony, that rapport, once you have that rapport, now your team is ready to listen to what you have to say.
Sure. And I've said this many, many times, and a lot of people don't like it, but there's a lot of people who know a lot of things, and that's wonderful. But a lot of those people can't apply those things that they know,
Hmm.
and that's okay. But there are also people who know things and can apply those things. So it's always good to know the difference. And that's why one of my favorite quotes by me is be a doer, not a talker, and know the difference.
We don't want good idea fairies running around all over the place. I want to tell you how to do it. You're married, you got
I
one of those good idea fairies that come along
I
with the
I,
ring.
I love her to death.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's what you, and that's it's 100% true. And yeah, there's a lot more we can do in this world as far as maintenance and reliability. But Bryan, as we've spoken about over the last 5 years or so, is we have to start taking the road less traveled. And we really need to look at the human side, why people don't want to adapt to it. I told you, people don't want change. They don't like change, but yet they're screaming for change and complaining about their situation. The only way to stop a problem is stop the problem,
Right.
find a replacement. Where do you want to be in your life? What's the proof and evidence that you need to have a good maintenance organization? And then what steps do you need to meet that? If you're just using everything you have over here as proof and evidence that won't work, anybody will tell you something doesn't work. You get somebody who comes, well, I've tried that 100 times and it doesn't work. Okay, 100 times? Really? Show me. Well, I tried it 10 times. Really? Show me 10 times then. Show me what you've done. Well, we did it once and didn't work. Great.
No shit.
So, yeah, it didn't work. Just because you didn't get it to work doesn't mean it won't work. It
Yep.
just means that maybe you found a way that you can write in your book of not to do something and then keep working
It's
toward.
funny. It's funny you say that. I had a friend of mine worked with me at the cat dealer. Very, very a seasoned mechanic. I learned a lot from him. His name is Mike. And when I was coming up as a heavy equipment mechanic at the dealer, I just gotten out of the Navy, working at the cat dealer, and I'd go over. Mike was like my guy I would go to add for advice about how to do things and maybe what I should do prior to disassembling something. If there's any tricks of the trade that really help, right? And one of the things he always used to say to me is, "You're not holding your mouth right." He just kept saying
Yeah.
that to me. I'd be pulling the first time I pulled a pump drive or something out of a 963 track loader or rebuilt a hydraulic tank and circuit, all that. I'd be like, Mike, I can't get this. This is not lining up, blah, blah. He'd come over and do it. And he'd just look at me. And I go, what? He goes, you just weren't holding your mouth right. And then it was like a joke as like, hey, I have this, I have this application knowledge, right?
Hmm.
And he would always show me, and it was really professional, but it was just funny because it was like his little smack to the new guy that was like, I know a lot of shit.
Yeah.
And I can
No,
show you, not just say it.
that is a very, very old saying because I've used it myself. And I
Really?
and I had somebody say it to me. Oh yeah, you're not holding your mouth right. You're
Yeah.
not holding your head just at the right angle to get that in. And all of a sudden somebody walks up and goes, and you go, how the heck did you get that in? I
Yep.
was working on my truck. I was telling you about it. I had 2018, the lifter let go, roller cam, took the cam and lifter out and whatever. And I was trying to put the starter back in. Well, I got schooled by my 74-year-old seasoned mechanic who was my coach during my apprenticeship, and he just walked up and just did a little turn, put it in place, and I go, "Damn it! How the
Yeah.
heck did you get that?" And I'm struggling with it for 15, 20 minutes trying to get this starter back in place, and
Yep.
you laugh about it after a while, and you just go, "Oh yeah, there we go. Didn't hold my mouth right,
Yep.
didn't stand correctly." Yeah.
That's so funny. Yeah, he said that to me several times, and but I think just to round it all off, it's just it's so important to know people, know your people, build relationships, build trust, however that is. And the way you find out how to build trust is through communicating, is through understanding, is through knowing the people you work with for and whatever. Um, and just you got to put in the work, right? I mean, you've just got to do the work.
100% agree. Same with what you're saying with upkeep. or any of the systems that go in. You don't want the cheapest price for things. When we buy inventory, whenever I've done a lot of material management training, I don't want cheap. I want quality for bargain price.
Sure.
Service is very important.
Yes.
Do you have a smile when you walk? I had an electrician working for me, and every time he picked up the radio to respond, he said, "Friendly maintenance." And at first I laughed when he said it, but after a while, you know what? He was right in what he was doing. He was saying, "Hey, I'm going to be right there.
This
And I'm
is
going
my
to come
job.
help." And that goes a long way to building that rapport. Once you create that rapport, people are receptive to want to use the tools that you have. Let's face it, if you guys, CMMS systems are great tools. It's not a CMMS system that's a problem. It's a tool. If you use it right, my God, it will reap benefits like you wouldn't believe. But when we don't use it, and then we're trying to use the data and it's really skewed, inaccurate, there's no data integrity,
Then we get mad at it.
then it's the piece of garbage. I
Yep.
want to buy that system to save my life. When I hear that, I just shake my head and said, "Well, you're telling me all about you."
That's right.
System.
That's right.
Yeah.
Your CMMS, its capabilities, its outputs are a function of the person sitting at the computer.
There it is. Yeah. Yeah. Strategic versus tactical.
Right.
Strategic planning for the future, and then the tactical planning of how you're going to get there.
Yeah, strategy is the CMMS input. Tactic is the output.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Jim, it is always a pleasure, brother.
Yeah, likewise. It's been a long time. Too long. We got to do this more often.
I know, man. Well, we can definitely now that we've broken the 4+ year ice,
yeah,
we can make this a lot easier.
Yeah, I actually what I'd like to do sometime is just give you some examples and give people opportunity, give them a hope of what can happen. I've got this great Excel spreadsheet for KPIs, and all it does is look at a labor table and all work order history table. And by God, the stuff you can do is unbelievable.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe we'll just kick it off now and say the next time you're on, we should talk about that manpower capacity piece and
Yeah, absolutely.
have an episode, because I beat that door down a lot with not just upkeep customers, but with prospects and other industry professionals, talking about you don't know what you don't know. And the one of the biggest wasted resources in any maintenance department is not parts, it's manpower.
Yes. And also what we do, sometimes we do it for preventive maintenance. If we don't get preventive maintenance work orders done, I have two codes. Equipment wasn't available or lack of manpower. And when I say lack of resources, it doesn't mean you don't have enough people. It just means that they may be off doing a lot of non-value, or they're doing a lot of reactive work.
Sure.
And if we change the narrative of what they're working on, and we really put our plan in place to get more proactive than reactive with good planning and scheduling, PM optimization, defect elimination, as we spoke about, you may just have enough people or maybe made too many.
Exactly.
Great discussion to have.
We will have it. Jim, I want to thank you again on behalf of Upkeep. You're my longtime friend, someone I look up to, and I'm so glad we could reconnect. I'm glad Greg got you on CMMS radio. I listened to that episode. It was awesome. And we'll keep trucking with it. Thank you again, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, Bryan. Always a pleasure. Great talking with you. Take care, my friend.
See you, Jim.
Bye.